All right, welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 21st, and I'm gonna have to pull these off a little bit. It's driving me crazy. Today's 21st. We're going to talk a little bit about a few things in relation to the National Association of Broadcasters. And I just got back last night, had a great experience there, learned a lot. But before we do that, we have Cornell here with us from London, England. Thanks for joining us. And we were just chatting a little bit before we got started here, and you are kind of in an interesting situation. And I would love, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of running over what you were telling me just a moment ago. So kind of your new situation, what you're going to be working on, and what you're trying to work through.
Right. Okay. So basically, recently I stopped working for a production company, which was mainly doing corporate and commercial jobs. And I have a great opportunity to shoot with my very great friend, a shoot in Rome, but he's also open to not only do photography, but video. And since audio is such an important part of every movie or video project, I want to get the job done as good as possible. So whilst looking for answers, I reached out to your audio course and hoping that it will clear up things. It actually made me want more than I actually can afford right now. So I'm in a little bit of I understand which tools would be great. However, the amount of situations that I will be in, it's kind of hard to get one of each at the starting point. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
For sure. No, there are lots of considerations there. And I've actually done a few weddings. And I can share with you some of the kind of experiences and kind of the challenges that come along with that. I'm sure you know a lot of those as well.
Yeah, I've been doing weddings in the past. It's just now trying to do an actual pre-event rather than just the couple by themselves in Rome and a little bit of their story being told, getting the ambience of the place and making not just a piece about a pre-event, the whole wedding thing. It's just how they started, how the whole thing between started.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So sort of a kind of a short narrative film that tells their story.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty cool. By the way, destination weddings too, a lot of fun.
They are.
You get to see a lot of cool stuff. All right. So I'm going to start talking, and I want you to kind of stop me and say, hey, good on that front, or let's talk more about that, so on and so forth. So let's dive into that. So there are a couple of directions. Almost always in my experience, you're going to be better off booming a microphone when you're capturing dialogue.
Yeah.
That may or may not be possible depending on, where you're at and what you're doing. So that's one of the big challenges, because when you're trying to move really, really fast, it's you and the photographer. You guys don't have a lot of extra hands. That may or may not be possible. So that's one consideration. Yeah. One thing I found, though, is when you're doing just sort of the interview parts, I don't know if you plan to do that on yours and how static those shots will be, but even when you're traveling, just having one of those very affordable mic stands, if they're seated, that can save you a ton, because then you can boom it out over them and you're good to go. So that makes a big difference.
Let me say straight away that we'll be traveling with loads of equipment. On the photography front. We will have, like usual, probably 8 or more suitcases of equipment with us. So you're saying that there's also is going to have to be a fairly quick setup is a very good point, because with the amount of stuff that we will have to lug around with us. And I think that for most of the spoken parts, the interviews, they would be locked off as in just camera on the tripod, because there will be we've got a movie and I've got a slider as well. So all the other shots will be in movement. So whenever they will speak, I would prefer that to be a static shot to have a greater impact on the whole storytelling part. So booming is one of my considerations. But I was thinking also about using lav mics, as in it would, because the moment that they walk away somewhere, I not necessarily want to capture them speaking, but if there is like a laugh or giggle or something funny between them, there's no way that I'll be able to set up the camera on the tripod and run around with a boom trying to capture them laughing.
Right.
So, and at the same time, I can't think of a bigger nightmare than trying to love up a woman in a dress and hide the transmitter so that is not visible. So I don't know what to do. Yeah,
it's a big trade-off. So let me tell you some of the things I've heard and what I've done. So a lot of times well, again, I'm not doing the super high-end weddings like you've been doing, but some considerations and people I've talked with. One thing, a lot of times they will put the lav mic on the groom. They're going to be close to each other. You can often use that to capture those little things, the I do's, the laughs, if there's a tear or a sniffle, whatever, you can get all that. So the best way, I guess it depends on type of tie the groom is wearing. A lot of times they'll hide the lav. I'm sure you know all this in your production work. Hide it in the tie is probably one of the better spots, certainly for catching the bride. Some things I've seen as well is hiding the lav mic in the hair of the groom, depending on what she's doing. If you have that opportunity, I assume you're going to be getting some coverage while her hair is being done. Yeah. If you can also work with the hair artist to get that hidden in her hair, depending on what she's got. And then hiding the body pack transmitter. People have done crazy things. They have attached it to the inside of the leg with Neopack. That's crazy stuff.
Very, very touchy subject, as the cultural background is mainly Hindu and Sikh.
Okay.
So
probably not an option.
The big no to do this sort of a thing. So whenever touching is already a lot to ask. So whenever I think about my rights, I know it has to be done, but I just don't know what's the respectful way of going about it.
Will there be any? Is it just you and your friend? Is your friend female?
No,
or male?
He's male as well. Okay. There will be a female, but her knowledge is, let's call it minimal. And I had quite a lot of rattling sounds whilst placing the lav mics myself, so I wouldn't trust that job to someone else. So I think that as you mentioned, I will have to go with a mic just on the groom and place it in such a way that will pick up both of them. The clothing will also change, and there is also 4 days of shooting, so it can't be just placed always in the same spot. So we'll see how that goes.
If the groom has enough hair with enough body, that I will be honest, I'm a fan of hiding the lav mic just above the hairline here. It's just so nice. They turn their head, you still get it. It has a more natural response than putting it down on the chest. But it's hard. It takes time. It takes time, and it can be a pain. And you can't do it if the guy doesn't have a lot of hair. Game over.
I haven't seen him yet.
Okay.
So, I'll think about it.
So I think really the answer is just having as many options available to you, because it's going to be crazy. I mean, you're going to be running like crazy. Got to make decisions in a half a second. And, sometimes if worse comes to worse, I actually have just put it on the lapel of the groom and just lived with it. There are lots of options there. Hidden behind the tie is another one. Gaff tape on both sides, so you kind of sandwich it so you don't get as much of the clothing noise. You've probably seen all these in your production work. So
I've seen a lot of those. It's just trying to actually to speak to someone about it rather than reading a blog post and saying, "Oh yeah, this worked great in this specific scenario," but what in other scenarios? And I was actually a little bit disappointed because I was looking forward to the section placing lav mics in your online course, and I was like, soon to come. I was like, damn it, that's exactly the thing I needed right now.
And actually, I will say that one is in production. I've done part of it, so it's on its way, and we've done the hair part. There actually is also a product called, what's it called? Bumblebee Industries does one that works actually pretty well. Let me see if I can pull it up here real quick.
So whilst you're looking at that, the radio mics that I was considering were the Rode Filmmaker Kit.
Mm-hmm.
And would you say that the output from the receiver is loud enough that it can go straight to the camera without introducing too much noise, or would you recommend going straight into an external recorder anyway? Because I had a problem in the past that I recorded a lot of interviews into an external recorder, and then I run line out from the recorder into the camera. Mm-hmm. And once I didn't have the recorder and I had to run it straight in the camera, the lav mics, and even though the levels seemed fine, the amount of noise that was introduced completely ruined the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Even though you can still hear the person, it shows you that the speaking is still at 12. It just ruins the whole thing.
Yep. Yeah, so, that's generally an issue with the preamplifiers in the camera. That's the biggest issue. So I think the main difference, at least that I've seen, is that when you're going through a recorder and then outputting to camera, on the camera you end up pulling the gain way, way, way back. So, and that's what gets you the cleaner recording. So I'd stick with that external recorder. I don't know. And it really depends on the camera and those cameras.
Well, that is another gray area, because we are incredibly lucky to get two Canon 1DX Mark IIs with us. And, well, I tested the video functionality and the autofocus functionality and the photo functionality, but I never had the opportunity to test it for audio. And I will not have an opportunity to test out if the preamplifiers are much better than the previous model. I'm not expecting them to be honest, but I will only find that out once we already are there, so it will be too late to make a decision like that.
Yeah. Which camera did you say?
1DX Mark II, the Canon, the new one that's supposed to come out.
Yeah, the 1DC I know had some. It was not a good preamplifier.
I work on that camera as well.
Yeah, I'd expect. We'll see, but I would expect not so good. I did find something here. Let me show you this here that may be of interest to you. All right.
Okay.
So this is actually kind of an interesting kit. It's by Bumblebee Industries. I actually saw these guys at NAB and got to kind of work with this. So it's a kit. It has an adhesive, but this also kind of unique thing that wraps around the lavalier, and it also comes with this fur. So it does a pretty nice job isolating clothing noise, and you can hide it a little bit better. So it gives you just some more options, and it's reasonably priced and affordable. So
it's like a next level up from the Rycote undercovers.
I think so, yeah. The Rycote undercovers are not bad, but I still get plenty of clothing noise with those. The kind of thing that's interesting about these is the black part of the cover here that you put on actually has a certain direction to its weave. So the idea is that if you put it on the right way, as the clothing moves across it, it actually dampens some of that sound. So it's kind of an interesting thing to look at. I don't know what your timeline is in terms of shooting, but
7 days until wheels up and rock and roll.
Maybe not this round, but something to consider for the future. So
very reasonably priced as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That definitely will be worth looking into.
Yep, for sure.
Okay.
All right. So there's that.
Cool. So just finishing off, not wanting to take up too much time on talking about that project. So knowing what I just told you, would you recommend me going the radio mics all the way, or still trying to squeeze in shotgun for the interviews and the radio mics for the rest?
I do radio mics. Well, I do radio mics across the board, and then pull in the boom for the interviews is what I would do.
Right.
You know, of course, all the considerations that you have in terms of the amount of gear you're going to have. By the way, which are you going to be use Rode or something else for radio?
I was thinking about Rode. Yeah, I had experience with the Sennheiser G3s, which I don't like the interface of them. I think they're a little bit last century to me. Not last century, last decade. I had experience with the Sony UWP mics, and I don't find the transmission between very clean. There is some sort of a rumble going on, and I tried channel scanning. I tried resetting them to factory settings. I tried presetting specific frequencies, and I still had that issue. Plus, the size of the lav mic from the Sony is driving me crazy because it is the size of almost like a pinky. So I don't like those. And yeah, besides going crazy on a budget, that there's not much other left that I would consider really.
No, that makes sense. I would say this: I've had very, very good luck with the transmitter receiver part of the Rode Link. That works great. I'm starting to run into a lot of problems with the included lavalier. So there's some issues where if its own wire crosses itself, I'm getting all sorts of noise. So if you do end up using that, make sure, and you stick with that lavalier, make sure you tape it so that it's not crossing itself, or else you could run into some issues there.
I never had those issues with just running it straight to the recorder, because I also use the because I presume it's just the Rode lav that is included with the So
and again that lav, again, the transmitter receiver, fantastic. I've had great results with that. It's that lav, and it's just its own cable. So it has nothing to do with even the cable that goes from the receiver to the recorder. It's just the lavalier mics thing. I don't know what it is. Just weird.
All right, so, that's a good note. Thank you for that. I'll keep that in mind.
You bet. All right.
How's the NAB?
NAB. Let's talk NAB. Okay.
Thank you very much for your tips. I'll definitely gonna put them to use.
Very good.
If something interesting comes out, I'm gonna share, hopefully.
Looking forward to that. I wish you would. That would be great to hear all the war stories.
Awesome.
So one thing I've been talking about kind of as I was heading out to NAB was the whole concept of mentorships. And that's one of the really hard things. My hope was with the course that I set up here was that not only would it be just online videos, but I would also be able to do, actually talk to people like we're doing here, which I was hoping that would add a whole lot of value. And I hope that at least some of you are finding that is the case. But mentorship is one thing that I don't feel like I really had a lot of mentorship. It was a little bit, but not kind of like the traditional mentor apprentice kind of setup where I could go work with someone on several months at least and really kind of pick up a lot of the practical tools of the trade and little tricks and what not to do. And, so I wouldn't have to make all those mistakes on my own. And I'm sure many of us are in that kind of same situation. And unfortunately, as I talked to, when I was at NAB, one of the things I got to do was on Tuesday night, there's an online forum called JW Sound Group. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but that's kind of an interesting group. It's a forum. Online forums are always they're great and they're horrible at the same time, typically. And I kind of lurk around on JW Sound Group because that's where almost all the pro sound mixers that are doing the major motion pictures and stuff, they hang out there, and the guys working on TV, they're all there, or a lot of them are there. And I learn a lot from just watching the questions they ask and the answers they get, just a ton of information. And things get heated at times too, like they do on any internet forum. So you have to kind of filter some of that stuff out, move past it. But I got a chance on Tuesday night. They hosted a dinner, and you could go to the dinner, and I got to meet a bunch of people there. I got to meet, we sat next to a guy that is working. He's out on the East Coast of the United States working. He's actually a union sound mixer, which is kind of interesting on the East Coast because there's not a lot of the work out on the East Coast is, and I'm not talking Atlanta or Louisiana. Those are kind of separate markets, but East Coast, he's out in Virginia, and a lot of the work there is for commercials. And so it's a little unusual to have a union-based mixer out there. So, but kind of getting some of his perspective and insights, and then also met a guy who is an absolute character and a legend. This guy's name is Senator Michaels. And he's been in the industry. He's getting up there in age. I think he just retired as a teacher from Los Angeles City College, and where he taught sound. But before that, his career took him. His first big thing that he worked on was the TV show Hawaii Five-0, and I'm talking about the original TV show back in the '70s.
Oh, I wasn't born then.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing, and he worked on Star Trek: The Next Generation. He worked on he worked on tons of stuff. Baywatch, for those that were into Baywatch, but all these kind of high profile things, and got to sit down with him he was very gracious. He sat down with me and my friend Scott Vanderbilt, who did the camera work for me. We went and did various interviews of the vendors, but also sat down with him, and he talked to us for about an hour and a half. And I was just, it was like being in heaven. It was really great to sit down and talk with him. And there were some things that I asked him. One of the things I asked him was, what about this mentorship thing? And he's a big advocate of education, and he taught at LA City College. I mean, he went to this little kind of, I don't know how big LA City College is, but it's not huge. It's not like a massive school, but he just absolutely loved it, being able to mentor people in that kind of situation. And he did confess, he did say, there's not a lot of that on film sets. You're going to have to prove yourself before you get there in a lot of ways. And so, I asked him, well, so what kind of things can you do? And he said, well, you're doing one of them right now. You're interviewing me, which is perfect. So we're actually going to post that video. That'll actually be, I'll put that up both in the course. I'll probably put the full version in the course, and then an edited down version will go on my YouTube channel. But a lot of great information there, and nothing surprising. And that was kind of funny too. So we were just doing it with a handheld mic, and we're sitting down and I'm holding the mic for him. And it's funny, at one point we were talking about microphone placement, and at one point he said, whoa, relax. You don't need to hold the mic that close to me, because I guess I was drifting closer and closer and closer to his mouth. But he talked about some things. I guess he got his start in Hawaii. That's where Hawaii Five-0 was filmed. And he was talking about how in Hawaii, this is the hang loose or shaka sign that people do, kind of take care. But he's used this as kind of a guide as to how far a boom mic should be placed from your mouth, which, the same thing we talk about in the course, of course. And he also confirmed the same thing. He's like, lav mics, got to have them, but never the first choice, and never the
necessary
only choice.
Evil sometimes.
Necessary evil, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm sure you found that in your production work previously. It was like, you can sometimes get some good sound out of them, but a lot of times there's a bunch of either RF hits where you drop outs, or someone touches it, or whatever it may be.
Especially during doing some documentary work, if you don't have a sound guy, it's pretty much impossible to walk around a factory or warehouse or an office and have still good audio, and at the same time man the camera. So the only way sometimes is just to lav both of the talents up, or one of the talents, and just roll with it.
Do your best. Do your best. I was actually watching a TV show as I was flying back last night. It was this, I don't even remember what it's called. Guy Fieri has this cooking show on I was desperate. I was tired. So I was watching this show on the airplane, and so he just goes down around to different restaurants. But at one point, kind of the establishing scene, they have him in this old classic American car with the top down, and he's talking as he's driving the car, and the sound is beautiful. It's pristine. And I was thinking about how in the world are they doing that? And I'm wondering, okay, did they actually have him do some wild lines later on to kind of sync up to that? Or did they hide some sort of mic in the visor of the car? Did they have him wearing a lav? What did they do? I'm really kind of dying to, kind of start to get in a little bit more and understand on these things that you're seeing on TV where the sound actually ends up coming out well. What is it they're doing? And part of the mentorship thing as well. So going to NAB was really great for me from that standpoint, where I got to sit down and talk to some of these people and figure out how is it that they're doing this stuff. And of course, being as respectful as possible. These are working professionals that do it full time. You don't want to be the leech that's coming in to steal all their secrets or anything like that. But just have genuine conversations with them is really, really interesting.
I had the same sort of thought today, because I was watching on my train ride movie called We Are Blood, filmed by Brain Farm. And basically it's a skateboarding movie which is shot on reds, and it's just madness. But the thing that I couldn't get my head around is all the things that the guys do on the skateboards, all the tricks, you can hear perfect sound with all the surround going on. And I knew that they were flying drones and helicopters, and they were using trucks, and you can't hear none of that. Yeah. And everything is in perfect sync, like every touch of metal, of gravel, of marble, every surface responds in a different way. So I couldn't get my head around how it was actually recorded. But when you type in behind the scenes, it's the camera equipment, the stabilization equipment, and they show you one shotgun on top of the camera, and that's it. And it's like, it can't be done like that. They wouldn't do it at Dolby Atmos Master only from the shotgun mic on the camera. But there is nothing, and that's what when you're saying to getting the whole mentorship program to actually get the pros to speak about the in-depth process, not just the basic that's is out there. It would be really good
to have all that. And in fact, that's another thing. There is a fellow, I don't know if you know him in your neck of the woods, so to speak, Matt Price, that does.
That name rings a bell.
Yeah, so he's on. I know he's on YouTube, and he posts some stuff there. And I think his website is soundrolling.com. Definitely worth checking out. And he's done a lot of interviews and kind of inspired me in some ways. He's interviewed a whole bunch of sound mixers and boom operators and all these other guys. A lot of great information there as well. So that's definitely something worth looking at. So, on the one hand, while we don't have as many of the mentorship opportunities like we used to, we do have the internet now. It makes things a lot easier in some ways as well. So we do have a lot more resources. So it's kind of, I guess, a mixed bag in some ways.
I especially opened a can of worms recently whilst purchasing a quadcopter, because you get those amazing shots.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely no audio to go with it. And whenever you try to stitch in a audio of something that has got the same thing in the title, you can tell straight away that the moves, even in the leaves, are different to what you're actually hearing. It's so difficult to actually match it, and you can't do any production audio whilst you're flying that thing, because it's just, it's so loud. Even when it is 100 meters above, you can still hear it, no problem.
Yeah. I don't know. There's got to be some answers, because you're right. I've seen a few of those cases where you're just like, wow, how did they do that? How did they do it? We'll stick together. We'll figure it out somehow.
Sure thing.
At some point. What else did he say? He said, again, going back to Senator Michaels, he said some other interesting things that kind of caught my attention. He said, he has lots of people come to him and say, which microphone should I get? And it's like, well, there's no one answer. Every situation requires something different. Everyone has their own preferences. He did say,
same like asking a photographer, what lens should I buy?
Exactly. Like, yeah, it does. Yeah, there's no answer to that. No good answer, at least.
Specific lens for every single thing.
Yeah,
but there isn't one all around.
Exactly. And frankly, in some cases, people are taking great shots with mediocre lenses. I mean, a lot of it has to do with skill as well. I've seen some very artistic, beautiful work, having been a photographer with, the $100 or $120 50 millimeter lens that you can buy. Yep. So, it depends on so many things. The one thing he did say is that every situation is different. So every situation requires something different. But in addition to that, he did say, the closest we've ever come to consensus as sound mixers on anything is that most of us agree that if we were going to be stranded on an island with only one microphone, we would probably all agree on the Sennheiser MKH 416. We would all probably say that's probably the one, which is a legendary shotgun microphone.
It's quite old.
It's very old. Yes, it's very old. I think it was first produced in the 60s or the 70s. It's old. and it's been around. Evidently, Sennheiser has tried and tried and tried to discontinue that from their line, but the demand for it is still very much there. So they're still producing it, and people are still buying it. And I agree. I mean, I have shot with it before, and it is an incredibly versatile mic. I mean, you can do so much with it, and it's kind of a sweet spot. It's got a tight pickup pattern, but it's not super tight. You can boom it over two people if you had to in a pinch without having to, cue back and forth and still be able to pick both people up. But it's tight enough that you're going to be able to, manage some of the ambiance and stuff of that nature. So, and it's reliable. I mean, it's hard to beat. So that was the closest he came to saying, yeah, I guess if you only had to choose one mic and you had $1,000 US that you could spend on it, that probably would be a good one to buy. So
interesting, because that isn't that absolute top of the range. There are still more expensive microphones.
Oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Sheps has some great offerings, both in terms of, the Super Cardio, the CMC 641. They also have and actually that one is being replaced a lot. A lot of people are very big on the DPA mics now. And there are a whole bunch of those as well. There's the Sheps also has a shotgun mic. They also did something interesting recently that I saw at NAB. So they have this shotgun mic. It's that very distinct looking blue, kind of metallic looking mic. And it does really well too, although I think some people have complained that if you go from a not so humid environment to a humid environment very quickly, it tends to have issues.
Right.
But then they've also made a version of it where you can get it in the kind of chroma key green. So you can actually boom it in the frame and they can key it out, which is kind of interesting. Of course, you don't want to put it in front of somebody's face, but nevertheless.
You still have to get the whole shock mount and the boom pole and the cable all in green.
Yep. You'd have to do all that as well, and you'd have to, still get a plate shot, so you'd have something to key. And so that means a locked off shot under most circumstances. But nevertheless, something kind of interesting that they're doing as well. But yeah, there are a lot of other choices. There's like the DPA has a contender in there as well on both sides, both in terms of super cardioid and a shotgun. Incredibly lightweight, which is nice when you've got it out on the end of a boom. Really small too. It was only, I don't know, it was really, really short. Sounded fantastic, but it's a $2,300 microphone. So there are lots of other options out there. Everyone's going to have their thing, but so those are some things that I saw there. He also said some other interesting things, and they're kind of escaping me right now, but let me kind of continue on, and I'm sure those things will come back to me. COS 11D, Senken is kind of, if there was an equivalent on the lavalier side, that would probably be the equivalent of the Sennheiser MKH416 so when I talk to a whole bunch of different mixers, almost all of them are using the Senken COS 11D as the lav microphone. Though there are other great options out there as well. Countryman has some great options. Tram has a good option. There are lots of others as well. So it's not like there's any one that everyone agrees on. And this is even amongst the pros, they don't all agree on that same thing. So anyway, that's something interesting to keep in mind. There were some new products that on the kind of lower end, if you will. Sennheiser produced a new kind of camera top stereo shotgun microphone, which they say would be kind of interesting, which, kind of they're billing as, hey, here's something you can use when you're trying to capture that ambiance. And it's kind of the most unique design that I've seen. It actually has, it's two shotgun microphones. So a lot of times when you see the stereo mics, they're two little cardioid mics in an XY configuration. This one was actually two shotgun mics kind of aimed out like this with these full grills over them. And I don't remember the exact model number. But that was kind of interesting because they kind of claimed you could use that not only for capturing ambiance if you wanted to add that to your production, and it records again with a 3.5 mil right into your camera, but you could also, by mixing those two channels, also get very nice clear dialogue with it. And I didn't have a chance to try it. You can't really try it on the show floor very well, but something worth looking into at some point.
I heard a sample of that microphone this morning.
Okay.
Yes, and it is called the. And I lost it now. Sorry about that.
No worries. Same here, but yeah. So how did it sound? What was your
It
experience?
was actually surprisingly good, considering all the background noise on the show floor. It was very clear to hear what the test was looking like. There was one person standing in front of the camera, shifting from side to side, just speaking about something, and even though it wasn't. It was like a mix between stereo and shotgun. That's exactly how I would describe it. It wasn't like you can hear everything around. You could hear like a 90-degree pattern sort of a thing.
Okay.
So it was clean, not very noisy, and it was still deep. It wasn't just like a usually very muddy surround sound. It's very, very usable. I would definitely compare it to like a Rode VideoMic Pro. I felt it was even better.
Okay, yeah. That would be an interesting one to look at for sure, a little bit closer. There are lots of options too. Sennheiser last year also announced some lavalier microphones that go straight into your phone. Well, at least some phones. It goes into the Apple iOS phones via Lightning connector. So what that means in practical terms is that those lavalier microphones are actually capturing the audio analog, sending it to a little tiny box that's in line on the cable, and in that box is an analog to digital converter, converts it to digital, and then sends it into your phone. So your phone isn't doing any of that heavy lifting. It's all done in the microphone. And the Sennheiser had partnered up with a company called Apogee, which has made some very high-class preamplifiers in the past and still does. And they had them do the electronics on that particular. There are actually two of them. One is the equivalent of the ME2, and the other, which they call the Clip Mic Digital, I think, and the other one is the MKE2, which is their higher-end lavalier microphone, which they did as well. And that one sounds pretty nice. Now you're starting to see the lower-end manufacturers come out with similar items. Aperture has a new mic that they're working on. I think it's not released yet. I think it's coming in the next couple of months, but it is a exact same concept. And their claim was Apple, all the rumors say that Apple is going to remove the 3.5 millimeter jack on the iPhones, and so you're going to need something else. And this is their answer to that. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll see what Apple does. Nobody knows. Well, some people know what Apple's doing, but not everybody knows.
Yeah, I spent 3 hours today in a shop, in an Apple store to get my screen replaced. I'm not very happy with them today either. Anyway, I am posting a link in the chat for the video from the Sennheiser booth that I saw. So there's a sound sample of that shotgun microphone, the shotgun stereo microphone. And there's also a sound sample of something that they call Ambio, which is like a 360 sort of a microphone solution for 3D and virtual reality.
Right. Very good. Thanks for that. So yeah, that's over in the chat for those that are interested in checking that out. Thanks for that, Cornell.
No worries.
All right. One other thing here's another thing that Senator said, which I thought was really interesting. He said a lot of people kind of beat themselves up trying to get audio on wide shots, and to be honest, the reality is you almost never need that, which was an interesting perspective. What he said was, hey, listen, you may get that wide shot, but there aren't very many of them. Every once in a while, a film will have a really, really wide shot where they're 20 feet above the actual actor, so you obviously can't boom into that kind of situation. But he says they almost always do double coverage, where they'll also do a close shot of the exact same thing, and they'll use the audio from that. So, and then they may do a J cut, in the edit, so that the talking actually starts on the wide shot, but then they cut to the close shot, and that's when you see them talking, and you can't see their lips moving when they're that far away anyway. So he says that's totally normal, totally common, done all the time. So that's one way to manage wide shots if you do have those. So something interesting to consider there as well.
That brings me also to I saw behind the scenes on The Hobbit. And the audio recorders were also saying a similar sort of a thing, that they had everyone laughed up just in case if they need to do any lips matching on the wide shots, because on all the close-ups there was an actual boom operator.
Yep.
But for all the other work, they had the mics hidden in the beards, or God knows where else,
Yes.
just to make the post-production life easier later if something needs to be matched.
Yep. Yep. On Bilbo, who one of the main characters, by understanding, they used Countryman B6s, and they put them on the lapels. He had this kind of this kind of frock kind of thing where he had the collars coming up like this, and they were hidden in the one in each lapel, actually. So when he turned his head, they could get both sides if they needed to. So again, lots of creative things. You do what you have to do is what it comes down to, it seems like. For sure. All right, we've actually exceeded our time a little bit. Anything you guys wanted to talk about? I see Mark has joined us as well. Anything you guys want to kind of talk about as a last thing before we close it down today? Mark? All good? Guys,
I got
thanks.
all my questions answered today, so thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom.
And likewise, thanks for bringing what you have there. I'm seriously very interested in hearing your experiences and kind of lessons learned on your upcoming shoots. So definitely come on back when you're back in town. We'd love to hear from you. All right. Thanks everybody again for joining us. We'll pick this up again next week, and until then, happy recording. Take care.
Take care.
See ya.